Sometimes wrestling matches are remembered for their bad endings. The work the guys and girls put into a match can get completely erased, and all that fans remember are the final moments of the bout. Sometimes the matches themselves are great right up until those last few moments. We've seen bona fide classics get tarnished due to unintentional errors and even badly scripted finishes. And this is going to be the focus of our video today: great matches with bad endings. I always leave out a ton of matches in these types of videos, and during the editing process I always remember stuff that really should have been included. So use the comment section to talk about more good wrestling contests that were let down by their finish. Remember though, the match has to be good. Two legitimate wrestling machines who had some serious credentials going at it in the WrestleMania main event. Kurt Angle vs Brock Lesnar headlined the granddaddy of them all in 2003, and the match promised to be a grapple fest that had some serious potential. Mat wrestling, explosive power moves, unreal agility, technical pedigree. WrestleMania 19 was set to showcase two of the greatest amateur turned professional wrestlers in the world, and indeed Brock and Kurt delivered. The WWE title was on the line here, with Angle defending the gold. Kurt had suffered a serious neck injury in the run-up to the big match. As a matter of fact, he broke his neck for a third time. 3 broken vertebrae, bone chips in the neck, 2 discs that slid into Kurt's spinal cord. And when you consider all this, you realise that it's a miracle Kurt was able to perform as well as he did. Funnily enough though, the finish of the match didn't involve anything Kurt did. Rather, it was Brock Lesnar who went upstairs and he landed on his head following a botched shooting star press, a move that Lesnar used to pull off during his early pro days. The shooting star gave Brock a bad concussion, and Kurt took care of Brock afterwards, making sure Lesnar left WrestleMania with a main event victory. And it's the shooting star press that everyone remembers from this match, not the excellent performance both men put on before the failed top rope move. Sorry, I had to include this. Again, everything that led up to the ending was great, especially if you're into the more hardcore and extreme side of pro wrestling. These two beat the living daylights out of each other. They put in a lot of work, and they must have went through a tremendous amount of pain. And also, to be fair, the match ended via pinfall before the infamous botch, but still, what ended up going down completely took away from what happened from bell to bell. The big planned finale completely negated the work both men put into this match, and that's a real shame. You know what happens here. The ring's supposed to explode, and instead we get a timid little pyro display that still makes me laugh every time I see it. Our main man, Eddie Kingston, had no choice but to play along as he tried to save Moxley's life by covering his body from the fireworks. And yeah, not good at all. Replays will always show the quote-unquote explosion and none of the brutal bumps both men took during the match. I still say the match is very much worth your time, even though the ending was probably the biggest botch so far in AEW history. I absolutely adore this match. Brock Lesnar made his WWE return following his run with the UFC, and he came back as a violent and unpredictable monster. Lesnar felt legitimate, he felt real, and he absolutely destroyed John Cena in this match at Extreme Rules, turning the match into a bloodbath in mere seconds and adding a lot of shock value to this main event. The problem with the finish? Brock Lesnar lost. After absolutely decimating his opponent in a manner that WWE fans had never seen before, Lesnar still gets beaten, and it's a really baffling decision to say the least. I do want to steer away from the wrong guy won type of finishes in this video and try to focus on the way the matches actually ended, but I felt this one should be included because, seriously, John Cena got his ass kicked from bell to bell more or less, and I can't think of another bout where someone got beaten up so badly but still comes out on top. It's a scary performance from Lesnar, really gripping stuff that keeps you glued to the TV screen, but the ending makes you scratch your head. No one, not even John Cena, should have beaten Brock on this night, and when you add in the dominating performance from Lesnar and the fact that Cena says he's taking a break after the match, it makes the finish all the more puzzling. The WrestleMania X ladder rematch at SummerSlam 1995 already had a pretty big problem. HBK and Razor were not allowed to use the ladder as a weapon due to Vince McMahon's desire to maintain a more family-friendly wrestling product. This didn't stop Shawn and Scott from being sneaky and doing little things like accidentally dropping the ladder on each other or accidentally swinging the ladder at each other, and somehow the two men were still able to pull off a good ladder match that stole the show once again. It's not as good as the Mania X ladder match. That one was pretty revolutionary in terms of ladder matches in the WWF, and it also had a pretty fun finish, but there is still a lot of fun to be had with the rematch at SummerSlam. The finish though, not so good. It doesn't completely take away from the match like Angle vs Lesnar or Omega vs Moxley, but it's still a bit awkward and it does make you chuckle when watching it. HBK goes up to grab the belt for the big finish. He grabs the IC title while taking his feet off the ladder, but that belt goes nowhere and Shawn crashes to the mat. Michaels gets all annoyed and he starts throwing ladders around before going up one more time, and to be fair, the crowd still pops when Shawn successfully grabs the belt. Again, it doesn't really take away from the match, but it's still quite amusing seeing the belt go absolutely nowhere on the first try and Shawn getting all pissed off. Immediately, we think of the finish to this one, and it's easy to ignore the incredible build-up to the match, a match that was a year in the making. Fans wanted to see this match, a fact that was proven by the record-breaking pay-per-view buy rate that WCW Starrcade achieved in 1997. The atmosphere in the arena is electric for this main event, and when Sting and Hogan finally square off, it makes every other match that gets labelled with that big match feel pale in comparison. This was one of, if not the biggest match in WCW history, and a lot was on the line from both a business and a creative aspect, and boy oh boy did they ever mess up the ending on this one. I've talked about Starrcade 97 a lot, and the finish of the match is something that's still up for debate in terms of what exactly happened. Conflicting accounts still exist, but all that build-up, all that time and effort, it was all pissed away when Hollywood Hogan covered Sting and Nick Patrick counted the Icon shoulders to the mat. It was supposed to be a fast count, but it wasn't. Hogan beat Sting in the middle of the ring, and still Bret Hart had to act like this was a terrible injustice to the Stinger, and the match got restarted even though Hogan beat his arch nemesis fair and square. Politicking has been blamed. Nick Patrick forgetting what to do has been another reason given. Even Sting's taken some heat about Starrcade, with Eric and Hogan stating that the Stinger was in no shape to perform. Whatever the case, WCW completely dropped the ball with this one, and in hindsight, it was a sign of things to come. The match restarts, Sting wins, everyone's left confused, and Starrcade fades to black. Easily one of the greatest matches to ever take place at In Your House, and a strong contender for the 1996 Match of the Year. Shawn Michaels vs Mankind is a perfect blend of violence and athleticism. A great match for Mick Foley to show the world what he's made of, a great match for Shawn to get a bit more gritty and shed away some of that white meat babyface persona that was starting to get a little grating for some fans. The Mind Games main event is almost perfect, and I say almost because it ends with a messy disqualification which was also completely unnecessary. After putting in a ton of work and putting together a match that still to this day gets a lot of praise, this classic encounter between the Heartbreak Kid and Mrs. Foley's baby boy ends when Vader hits the ring to attack Michaels, and Michaels is easily able to send the big man back out of the ring. After the bell, Paul Bearer attacks Shawn with the urn, Sid comes out to attack Vader, The Undertaker appears from a casket to attack Mankind. It's messy, really messy, and it would have been a whole lot easier to just give HBK a victory and have the interference happen after the pinfall. Still, the ending shouldn't deter anyone from watching the Mind Games main event from start to end. It's a very fun match during a pretty rough year for the WWF. Check out my Mind Games review if you want to learn more. I remember listening to Stone Cold's old podcast on Podcast 1, and he talked very fondly of Kurt Angle. Steve said that Kurt Angle was absolutely impossible to blow up, and even though Steve tried to legitimately make Angle gasp for air during their matches, Kurt would always show that his cardio levels were above those of your typical pro wrestler. During their SummerSlam 2001 match, you can see Austin and Angle trying to gas each other out. They don't let up at all, and the match they have here is truly something to behold. The story was good too. Austin turned his back on the WWF to join the Alliance, and Kurt Angle seemed destined to take the WWF title away from Stone Cold to restore glory to the Federation. But forget the story and just enjoy the match. It's a performance of a lifetime for Kurt Angle, and credit to Steve Austin. The Rattlesnake did everything to make Kurt Angle look even better than what he already was. Angle survived 3 Stone Cold Stunners, a deep cut that left his face covered in blood, a vicious and more violent rattlesnake on his tail. Kurt Angle looked very resilient during this match, and he was being accepted by the fans as the next WWF champion. Only the match ended in disqualification. Austin whacks Earl Hebner. The next referee that comes down watches Austin hit a low blow before he takes a stunner. Our next referee takes a shot with the WWF Championship belt, and dodgy official Nick Patrick decides to run down after Angle hits his Olympic slam, and Nick refuses to count. He calls for a DQ, and the championship doesn't change hands. It felt like it was Angle's time to once again hold the title, but that didn't happen, and the match itself really does suffer thanks to the deflating ending. Nick Patrick taking an ankle lock was a small consolation prize for our Olympic hero. Stone Cold was on fire in 1997, and he'd become a surprising fan favourite as viewers started preferring the cool badasses of pro wrestling. 97 was an important and telling year for the WWF, and it was also a year that provided the foundation for what was to come, that of course being the Attitude Era. Steve Austin was a key player in all of this, and he was on his way to winning his first WWF Singles Championship when he faced Owen Hart at SummerSlam 97. The guys had the audience in the palm of their hands. Owen was part of the villainous pro-Canadian Hart Foundation stable that American fans at the time didn't care for all that much, and Owen had promised the word that he would make Stone Cold kiss his ass at the end of this match at SummerSlam. Well, Austin didn't have to do that, but he did suffer a serious neck injury that could have ended his career, or even worse, it could have truly affected his quality of life. Owen dropped Austin with a piledriver, and the match comes to a halt. Austin isn't moving, and Owen looks deeply concerned. The commentators, including Vince McMahon, have no choice but to announce that Austin's hurt, and he's hurt pretty badly. All you could do is watch this and just hope the guy was okay. It was scary back then, and it's still pretty uncomfortable to watch now. Austin, determined to finish the match, crawls over to Owen while his limbs are like jelly, and he performs the best schoolboy pin he could given the circumstances. And even though Austin wins the match and the Intercontinental Championship, it really doesn't matter. Fans, officials, the commentators, everyone's concerned about Steve's health, and it doesn't look good as his feet drag along the floor when going back up the rampway. It's a match that's remembered for the piledriver and nothing else. It is tough to watch this one while trying to put the finish out of your mind, but Owen and Austin were having a great bout right up until the piledriver spot. It's a bad day at the office for Stone Cold, and the injury would affect the remainder of his career. It would have been easy to include the WrestleMania 30 match right here, but at least the ending of that match didn't include any nonsense. SummerSlam 2015 hosted the big rematch from that very WrestleMania, and The Undertaker was presented with a big opportunity, an opportunity for revenge and redemption. After Brock Lesnar ended the streak, fans were pretty excited to see the legendary Undertaker step into the ring with the Beast one more time, but I don't think anyone could have guessed how this match was going to end. It's so out there and so stupid that it's hard to think of any good reason why the bout ended like it did. Someone came up with this ending and someone thought it was a good idea, and I find that really hard to comprehend. Here's what happened. Lesnar applies the Kimura lock after reversing Hell's Gate, and for some reason that we don't see, the timekeeper rings the bell. The referee, mind you, didn't signal for the bell. The timekeeper just decided that he had the authority to end the match, so he rings the bell and Brock thinks he's won. So Lesnar releases the hold, the referee wonders what's going on, and he gets distracted while having a go at the timekeeper. While all this is going on, the Undertaker hits a low blow and he applies Hell's Gate again. Brock gives Undertaker the middle finger before passing out, and the Undertaker wins. So we have a timekeeper who thinks he can ring the bell anytime he wants, along with an incompetent referee. It's a strange finish all around, and one that still feels really unsatisfying. Given the weight of this match and considering the streak ending the year prior, they really should have thought of something else. At least we got Taker and Brock laughing at each other during this match though, so that's something to take away from this main event, I guess. Videotape shown on Raw the next night proved that The Undertaker did indeed tap out, but that doesn't really help how the actual pay-per-view ended for viewers at home. If fans wanted to see this one back in the day, they'd have to hunt down the WWF Supertape 1994 VHS. Word quickly spread of an incredible Hart Brothers vs Steiner Brothers match that occurred during a Wrestling Challenge TV taping, and fans who had the pleasure of watching this one in the mid-90s quickly realised that their friends weren't exaggerating. This is an incredible tag team bout, and it feels wrong that these two teams didn't square off in a proper televised match. Granted, the Bret and Owen alliance wasn't supposed to last for a long time, but when you see how good these four men work together, you'll instantly want to see more. It's a match you can replay over and over again and never get tired of. You get technical wrestling, athleticism, power moves, absolutely perfect tag team psychology, a rare instance of Bret Hart becoming frustrated because he struggles when mat wrestling one of his opponents. It's a glorious tag team affair that everyone needs to see. I don't care if you don't like the Harts or if you don't like the Steiners, it's a match that's way ahead of its time. How does such a match end? Indecisively, that's how. Even though the match didn't air on TV and it was strictly for fans in attendance or fans who bought the video, both teams remain protected and we get a double count out. It's annoying that a match filled with such brilliance has to end this way. Even if it had to be a draw, there were other ways of doing it rather than a rushed and uncreative count out, and I honestly think the only flaw this match has is the way it ends. I do appreciate the fact that both teams were babyfaces at the time, and during this era, the WWF wanted to protect babyfaces at all costs. But as mentioned, it wasn't for TV. A team could have won here and the handshake could have still happened. Nothing would have been lost. Still one of my favourite tag team matches of all time, but it does pain me to admit that the ending could have been better. Roman Reigns' current championship run will prove to be historic, and wrestling fans of future generations will be talking about this reign for a long time. Roman defended his Universal title against the Demon Finn Balor at Extreme Rules 2021, and for a moment it looked like Finn was going to be the man who took away Roman's championship. Not only did the Demon bring it to the head of the table, he also absorbed a lot of punishment and he still got up afterwards, even surviving Roman's spear and an attack from the Usos. At the end of the match, Finn gets speared through the barricade. He's out cold, but then the heartbeat from the beginning of his entrance music plays and he's able to stand up like nothing had happened. Now, to be fair, this bit was awesome and I know people will disagree, but I thought the way he stood up in time with the music was good and the crowd definitely popped for it. The issue here was when Finn went to the top rope immediately afterwards and the rope broke. No explanation, the rope just snapped and Roman Reigns capitalized to win the match. You could say WWE was trying to make this look real, as in it was purely accidental, but Finn isn't really the heaviest wrestler in the world, and seeing as we had Big Sheamus up there dancing earlier in the night, well, you can probably see where I'm coming from here. It wasn't believable that the ropes would just break due to the weight of Finn Balor. Also, video footage caught a cameraman cutting the ropes at the other side of the ring, so immediately fans wanted an explanation and they wanted to know who this rogue cameraman was, or if he was maybe paid off by Paul Heyman. The WWE didn't give an explanation, and to this day, it's still a mystery. Finn said in an interview with Shaq Wrestling that there were plans for the storyline to continue following Extreme Rules. By the sound of things, this was going to be a rivalry that went on longer than what it did. But the return of Brock Lesnar meant the Balor and Reigns feud was scrapped, and that means the explanation to this weird finish was also scrapped. Reigns vs Lesnar was already booked for Crown Jewel. The commentators talked about it quite a lot during this main event match. But all this begs the question, if a Reigns vs Lesnar program was already given the go-ahead, why did WWE still go through with this finish at Extreme Rules? I guess it's something that WWE can come back to. It's a loose end that could get tied up in the future. But fans who watched this pay-per-view couldn't believe how it ended, and it felt more ridiculous and goofy than surprising and exciting. Again, let me know what good matches you thought had bad endings in the comment section. And remember, it's not about bad match results or the guy you wanted to win not going over. It's more about how the finish of the match actually played out and what the finish meant to the bout as a whole. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and please take care.